who really likes these guys? Because I can open up the field to whoever wants to. Or is it not too love? Jeremy, maybe we'll have you.
Okay,
do this,
so
do this
I have to be the black sheep because, and this is of course, my main presence. The lore for the Deathreavers is great.
Okay. Well, let's do stats and opinions on gameplay. Then we'll get into lore. Yeah, because I understand.
So I'm like, but no, mechanically, gosh. All right, so we got Deathreavers, loyal to Utkar, summoned by Utkar, and the Soulborgs, common squad, Deathreaver class, tricky, small 3. So one of our first options for the tinies. Like just swarm squads that are out there in the game. Their special power, they have Scatter, which is after a Deathreaver you control rolls defense dice against normal attack from an opponent's figure. You may move any 2 Deathreavers you control up to 4 spaces each. And then there's Disengage, which is Deathreavers are never attacked when leaving an engagement. Climb times 2, which is when moving up or down levels of terrain. Deathreavers may double their height. They have life of 1 as common squads, of course, and then move of 6 because they're all over the place. Range 1, attack 1, defense of 4. I've had experience. I've had lots of angst with these entities, as one would say, and then score 40 points. They're rough. They're rough to fight against. It feels awful to play them because it's like, how do I explain it? This is only going to make sense to people who's ever played Destiny. But it's like they're the Jotun of Heroscape. They're like that got one gun that everyone has and that everyone uses, and it's always good. There's no question to the meta. There's no question to their potency. They're super great, but you're just mad because if you see them in the battlefield and you're fighting against them, exhausted, right? Because you're just like, oh gosh, not them again. But when you're playing them, it's like.
But Jeremy, there's like they don't synergize with anybody. Isn't that an issue if they don't like synergize with anybody? Actually, they synergize with Morgoth. I actually have Morgoth. Oh my goodness. Okay, I might consider that. Yeah. Anyway, that's kind of a mock question, but it's good that they
Scatter
don't.
Is so intense. There's. Like, and since we have the time to talk about it, we have now officially gotten to the point in the ToV Live where we get the ToV Podcast, where we get to talk about the Deathreavers, these entities that have dominated the scene. And it's just, I hope this conversation following will explain to new players, veteran players, everyone, just why these characters are so. It just has so many feelings associated with Deathreavers, especially when you play against them. And it's, we're going to be talking about that. It's going to be fun. Yeah. You'll see.
And Josiah, how about you go first? You haven't really had much of a chance to talk, so I'll let you go first, sir.
Yeah, so first I love their little Utkar tattoos they have on their side, just visually. I think it's a nice little detail. These guys kind of exist in a trifecta fork scenario where no matter what you do against them, unless you're very prepared, they come out on top. So with that high defense, you attack them, chances are you may not even kill one. And if you attack them, then they have a chance to move, and then they have the ability to move far, and there's 4 figures in the squad. So they just kind of do too many things well, and I see why people use them. But yeah, they're just, I get what they're doing. I just think they have too much defense. If I was to redesign this card from scratch, I would probably lower that defense to make them more just a scatter unit.
For 40 points, that's huge value there for like the classic point. What are they Delta points?
60.
Are they 60? Okay, so that makes it a little bit better. See, this is the value of Delta points here. But yeah, okay, go ahead, Josiah. What were you saying?
Yeah, so I just think these guys are less good in draft formats if you know how to take them on, but if you're in a tournament setting where they're just there and you're not prepared for it, then you're gonna really get stuck in the little tiny bodies, not move much.
Absolutely. Okay. And Ken, do I dare ask you
You got it. You got it.
I despise these guys with every soul. I'm like,
I hate it with passion.
I have been playing competitively since 2007, and I have beaten thousands and thousands and thousands of Deathreavers. I probably lost to hundreds and hundreds of Deathreavers. As a melee player, like you have to you use a lot of brain power to beat these guys. Heavies love these. Heavies don't mind because you have chomp and disengage, right? You just bite a hole and run through.
Sure.
Like Mike said with Gilbert, you can dispatch disengage. So you may lose a knight, but at least you didn't give up the order marker or the movement or the turn, I guess, with the knight. And dwarves are a little trickier. You do have commander strike, but like Mike said, at least when they're shooting at you with 4 defense, Q9, or I always say Q9 and rats because that's always what happens. Like Deathreavers or not Deathreavers, Death Chasers. The Amoebic Saw, but like the 4 attack is good, but like the problem is, you can have 3 locked down. You kill one, he scatters the other 2 away, and then like you whiff your other 2 attacks, right? So, because how you beat these guys is you force your opponent to put order markers back on them, because every time you kill one or attack one, he's getting half an order marker for free. So like you have to be able to force him to continue to put order markers on them. So you're really trying to poke and prod and trying to maneuver around them, trying to take key disengagements. Because a lot of people over the years in Heroscape, I found out like they see engagement as like not Cyberclaw, like you can't move, but Cyberclaw in terms of like you can't leave that character, especially with the squad figure. They just somehow think you're locked in position. Where when like when I first started playing, I was just disengaging, and people were like, I don't know what the hell's going on, because if I just stay there and fight your rats, I'm going to lose. So like we talk about this all the time in the podcast. Like you got to make choices. Like you got to play to your outs, and my out is you whiff that leave an engagement strike, and I get to your Niflheim or your Q9 and start wailing on them with my dwarves. So, so like these guys, like you have to take chances with these guys, like disengage if you have to. I mean, I wouldn't recommend triple disengaging or anything, but you have to really poke and prod at the walls they build and really force them to continue to put order markers on them as you're maneuvering your squads or whatever. So like these guys, these guys were everywhere, like 2007, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Once Mark started doing reverse the whip, they started going down a little bit in 2011, and we continued doing it. They went down more and more and more and more and more. But you still see them in cheese tournaments, anything like that. So yeah, they're just. I hate these guys. I do not enjoy them. I think like there's so many things that could have been better. Like 0 attack, like 60 points, like 3 defense, like not disengage, like move up 2 more, but they can't disengage. Like so they could have. Then, so I think originally like rats were attacking rats to get them to move, and they had to errata that. Yeah. So like, that's so. I mean, can you imagine rats attacking rats? Like it's just a disaster. Plus, the game's going to take like 40 minutes longer. So, but yeah, no, I hate these guys. I despise them. I'm a melee player though too. I mean, they're not great. Like Fourth Bass hate them too. So it's not just melee. So if you need special attack, or you need like Chomp or Acid Breath or something like that to get through these guys.
And they're A+ power rankings, so in most tournaments that have those limits, you're not going to be able to use them anyway. Correct?
If they have some sort of restricted list or something like that,
yeah. So. Okay. And Alex, do you have any thoughts about these guys?
Every time I've ever played against them, even when I've used them, it has been just like you guys mentioned, just holding down the field, and what you mentioned, actually like getting through, disengaging. That is like your best bet. I mean, it's a 50-50 shot. You might lose the squad in doing that, but I mean, they just lock you in place unless you have the gruts and you can just disengage so easily. They're just very difficult to like. I mean, I had this funny idea I told Nick we need to do one of these days for a video. We just do like, it's like the most annoying armies facing off, like Goblin Cutters and Deathreavers, because they both can disengage constantly and like, scatter. And I thought that'd be fun. He's like, no one's gonna want to watch that.
Yeah. And Mike, any thoughts about? I know Ken gave some good advice when it comes to like playing against them. And any thoughts you have about these?
Yeah, I guess I'll be the dissenter here. I actually think they're pretty tactically interesting. I only really have an issue with them when they're paired with Raylan. Like, to me, that's the one combination in the game that I think is just unbearable. 6 defense rats is just not okay. Like, Raylan plus Q9, I don't mind because it's just 9 defense Q9. You know, whatever, I can kill that. Q9 plus rats, like, if they don't have Raylan and it's 4 defense rats, all of a sudden my attacks at least do something. It's not like I'm like, it's if I am taking attacks into rats, at least there's a reasonable shot I'm getting kills with, like, you know, 4 attack heavies or 4 attack you know, knights buffed or whatever. So it's just like, but when there's 6 defense, they just become extremely oppressive. You know, that's my perspective at least. I think like running 1 to 2, like 1 squadron reverse the whip is been, you know, something people have experimented with. I've definitely experimented with it. I haven't brought to ScapeCon before, but it's just like the 1 squad of rats just to be like, you know, tying but you have to, if you have 1 squad, you have to use them really well, right? Like you have to, you know what you're doing exactly, know exactly what you want to tie up, where you want to position them, because if you lose one, you're losing, you know, one of your only 4 rats, right? So I think in like Delta, they're a lot more manageable too. Like 3 rats Q9 is like 400, I don't know, 440, 450, somewhere in that vicinity points. And like, that's an army I feel pretty comfortable beating with most melee armies in Delta. You know, it's just, without Raylan, they're just not a huge deal in my opinion. You know, I think they're a skill check from both sides of the table though. I think it's a high skill matchup with melee versus Q9 rats. I do expect the better player to win most times in that matchup, just regardless of, you know, who's playing it. But you know, the Q9 rats player needs to understand that they have to keep reinvesting order markers into the rats and against somebody that's good with melee, and the melee player has to understand when to attack, when not to attack. Even into range, same with like rats into 4th mass or something. I know Chris Perkins lost to my buddy Hound's Rule in 3-headed Hydra last year. My buddy had 4th mass, you know, 4 squads of 4th mass into Q9 3 rats. Like, everybody, you look at that on paper, and that's a terrible matchup for 4th mass. 4th mass are going to lose, yada yada. Well, I had taught my friend that summer, like 2 weeks earlier, because I only had about 2 weeks last year to prep due to the bar exam. I taught him that, look, you're going to look for the opening and you're going to see, is my win condition this game killing all the rats or killing Q9 and never attacking a rat? And you're going to look at his order markers and you're going to figure out, and him being general you're going to figure out how you're going to win this game, right? Is it going to be disengages? Is it going to be just killing, because there are only 4 defense, there's only 12 of them. Can you kill them fast enough? If you can't, never shoot one. Chris Perkins didn't reinvest in order marker, and Chris is a very good player, of course, but you know, everybody makes mistakes. He didn't reinvest in order marker in the next round. Emery saw it, he seized upon it, he got a little lucky with the dice, but it's like, that's what happens when you don't reinvest that order marker, right? So that's the thing. I think it's a skill army from both sides of the table. So I think, again, if you take Raylan out of the equation, making the rats 6 defense, in which case, like, you can make the right call and just still not win that game. You know, I just think that pairing is really unhealthy. But otherwise, you know, again, I think in a lot of formats, you know, rats without Raylan are very manageable. They're an interesting piece. It's just cool to have something so different in Heroscape where its one goal is defensive, right? Yes, you get little bites here or there, but its main role is defensive, and there really aren't a lot of units that do that. You have Warriors of Asher, but I mean, honestly, from my perspective, Warriors of Asher are, like, if they were good, like really good, they'd be way more oppressive than rats. You know, in a world where Warriors of Asher was a 4-man squad, let's say, and like A tier, with melee, I would way rather face rats than Warriors of Asher. You know,
Sure.
Maybe that would be the thing that, you know, Warriors of Asher being good, maybe that would be the thing that put Death Knights over the edge of being like top tier competitive, right? As a counter or something. But like, yeah, Warriors I think are just much more oppressive for melee. I'd much rather play in a world where rats are the thing that are good. And like, sometimes you gotta understand, like, when do you take bites and when do you just develop more up, and how many order markers you put on, which ones you scatter. You know, there's a lot of tactically interesting things with them. So I don't mind them. Again, just no Raylan plus rats. I think that's where it gets annoying.
Yeah, and one thing I appreciate is the scatter ability, and this is one thing that I discovered when it come to like goblin cutters. I played those like a week ago. It's great to have them separate when they get attacked, and then you can regroup and then attack again. Now goblin cutters are a little bit different of a strategy with them, but I found that it's very valuable to have that, and then you have a disengage, and you're able to regroup and then reform against your enemy. So I see the value in that, and I think if they didn't have that scatter, it would be a lot less value for those guys. Now let's go into the character bio here. Jeremy, I'll just give you the whole hash of it. If you want to read the character bio and then talk about the lore, and I'll give you about let's say 5 minutes. Okay.
Oh, okay. Let's see. 10:33. All right, I'm watching. I got my eye on the timer. So character bio. A mile beneath the surface of Alpha Prime, a Meridian woman holds her arms tightly around her knees, rocking back and forth, trying not to make a sound. Echoing through the maze of tunnels and shafts is the sound of scratching. Oh. A horrible sound, all too familiar. They've sent out the rodents, vile little machines, always seeking, always scratching, always gnawing. It's not so much the threat of the Deathreavers in and of themselves that incites overwhelming fear. It's what they bring. The Reavers are sent out as scouts to crawl into the smallest places, climb over and through the roughly built barriers, and find what they seek.
Oop. Sorry.
Oh gosh, you're good.
Yeah, see, I knew this type of thing would happen. All right, there, when attacked.
You're good. When attacked, the Reavers scatter. If even one of them lives to return to the surface, the Meridians know they'll have to abandon their hard-earned shelter, and so they fight. And so they fight. They fight with everything they have to pry open their horrible metal shells and gut the Reavers of all their twisted wires and cold circuits. All right. So yes, we have some pretty good lore from the Deathreavers. Of course, we learn about the Meridians, which, if you know from your Blastertron bio lore, when we got to go over the Blastertrons a couple episodes ago, we learned that Meridian was the original name of the planet Alpha Prime. Okay, so the Meridians created the Solborg. Or there was a scientist. This is a quick summary, I promise. There's a scientist who created the Solborg because they lost a child to an accident. They tried to bring that person back from the dead,
Right.
and found a way to basically enshrine consciousness into a metallic body. And then they were able to basically replicate the process multiple times to the point of creating the Solborg. And so we come across the Solborg 3,000 years later. So most of the Solborg that are being summoned onto Valhalla are 3,000 years after the first Solborg was invented. And then that's where we start getting all the martial types, like the Deathreavers and the Death Chasers, or Death Stalkers and all of that. And yeah, the Meridians are mostly, like most of the Meridians that we know, are either the ones hiding in this canal that's in this lore, or they have been shipped off to the world Isidora, where the Warden comes from. So that's where we're at right now. They gave a really effective presentation of what was going on in the planet where the Solborgs come from, and as you can see, so can justify it's just everyone hates them. Even on their home world, they're hated. So it's like, there's it's the fact that they're described as scouts. They go out, they bring the worst of what the Solborg army has to offer. And so that's why everyone's like, once they hear the rats, they're like, please no. So even there, they're scared of them. And there you go.
I
did it in 5
found that more
minutes.
creepy too when I first read it. And I was like, they did a good job making that kind of creepy. Even for as a kid, when you first read it, you're like, it's kind of nerving.
Yeah.
It's really I don't know if that was Colby that wrote that, or if it was one of the previous writers, because I don't think Colby took over until Swarm of the Morrow. But yeah, whoever the previous writers were, at that point with Thor's Vengeance. Some of their bios are really, really well written, and just you're just like like love Heroscape storyline, good stuff.
I wanted to bring up real quick when you mentioned the first Soulborg. It was 3,000 years later. For us, that's like the equivalent of like someone doing this in ancient Egypt, and now we're having now. And I'm like, that's even our time. That's a long period of time, and just the idea that it took that long and everything fell apart, the whole world. So
exactly. No, the story theme of Alpha Prime plays really well in just like the designs, the units that we get. But as far as lore goes, I highly recommend, if anyone has a chance to read it again, the Blastotrons bio is really good. Gladiatrons, the Majors, and then of course the Deathreavers. They all kind of give you a really good photo presentation of what's going on the home world. And chat's even saying, I hope they do bring some Meridians into Renegade's Heroscape editions. It's a really easy option. It's already laid out in the story. You don't really have to do much. You get to create a sort of rebel faction that can do, if you want to do some damage to Soulborg, right? You want to add a little extra mechanic benefit to anyone that wants to do anti-Soulborg builds. You could create a Meridian army. So that would be really cool. And just thematically, you got the rebel creators of the Soulborg coming back to fight. They're like, we created them so we can take them apart too. So we got it'll be really cool theme in the future of the game. I hope to see.
All right, and so that's taking a look at Deathreavers, a beloved hated,
yeah,
common squad.
I mean, if you like rats and you like robots, they're fun. If you don't, then
I would agree with kind of Mike. Definitely, they shouldn't be used lightly. Make sure you know how to use them in order to use them. And I don't know about financially. I'm sure they're a bit valuable on the market. But again, 3D print if you need them, because you need a squad of 4. But they definitely have their value. They whether or not your opponent loves you or hates you if you play them, it remains to be seen. But definitely a challenging and unique squad to consider for your Heroscape collection.